Okay, let's just start, okay? So, if you've seen my previous tutorial on Live2D, I missed or skipped over a couple of things. It's partly for the sake of time, but also because I wanted to concentrate on like specific techniques rather than showing a specific way on how to solve a problem, because I didn't want to funnel anyone into thinking it's the only way, like doing this part of a live 2D model is the only way to solve that problem. So when I did that live 2D tutorial, and that was, at around it was a special video for my second anniversary, more or less. I skipped over the eyes. And since then, like in the last several months, I've been getting a lot of attention towards that video, and people have liked it a lot, but I've also noticed some people having issues with trying to figure out the eyes, because perhaps it's because I didn't cover that. I did kind of show a method, and that was actually me focusing on the mouth and how to make that open and close. But the mouth is a fairly simple part of the face compared to the eye, because you could, be fairly simple about it and just show, it's just a tongue. It's just red, right? There's nothing really moving underneath it. You didn't really need to think about what was underneath it. For the eyes, however, now if you've studied art at all, there's a very important note here where eyes are a fairly complicated object to draw, and it's very important to portray the main parts correctly, because they're a very important part of facial expressions, right? It's not only is it a spherical object, but it's also a translucent object, and it has shine to it. So like you can see here that I have a lot of different colors and strokes here, and they're all actually representing different parts of the eye. There's the glisten and the specular lighting of the outer edge, and then there's like the concave nature of the inside, and so there's a lot of reflections involved, and for a few line strokes, there's a lot being communicated there. But there's also the eyelids and how to make them open and close in a certain way, and that's what I'll be concentrating on here. And this is, I suppose you could call this a bit more of an advanced tutorial. And much like what I just said about the mouth and how that's more simple, the eyelids close in a very specific way as well, because there's a top part that goes down and a bottom part that also goes up, and they need to join together somehow. And in anime and stuff as well, the mouth, it's just a circle. You can cheat a lot there, but it's very important to get the shape of the eyes opening and closing correctly. For the rigging process of this, it's going to depend a lot on how you choose to draw your model, and also on just the kind of method you prefer to do it, because there are a lot of moving components here, like I said about the eyes, but not only that, but there's also the eyelids themselves and the eyelashes and the top part of the eyelash and the bottom part of the eyelash. And I'll essentially be going over 3 different methods on how to do it. So yeah, and hopefully I can do all of it correctly. So I'm going to try to do all 3 eyes on a single face and then rig them in a single try so you can see all of them. well, let's just see how it goes. So first off, I'm just going to draw a basic face here, because if I just show the eyes, it's not going to be in any context. It needs to be on top of a face. So let's draw just like I'm doing this live, so let's just draw something like this, and hopefully it'll look like a face. Now I'm not going to go over some. I'm trying to avoid going over some drawing principles here. But I'm hoping that you're a bit familiar with facial proportions and stuff like that, and the fact that the eye should actually be in the middle rather than up here. Let's draw a little bit of hair. It's going to be fairly simple. Actually, that should be a different layer, shouldn't it? So let's draw some hair here. Just some simple ribbons. I don't know if I've gotten better or worse at drawing, because I'm drawing fast. What kind of hairstyle is that? And let's do some quick coloration. So let's give that a nice color there. And for this, hopefully I have closed all of the lines. I did not do it there. And just throw a paint bucket at it now. Let's give this some nice purple. No, whoops. Oh, that's what I do for doing an ugly bit of hair. Let's I mean, at least I did that correctly. Okay, let's try again. Let's do that. Hopefully everything will be closed. This is not meant to be a lesson on hair, so let's see, let's color that in. Man, that's actually a bit of an eyesore. Let's give this person some nice blue hair. I'm not a narcissist. I'm not drawing myself, by the way. I'm just, wow, that is a terrible hairdo. It's almost a rectangle. Let's fix that. Let's fix that a bit. Jeez. What kind of, it's almost like Leia. It's like Princess Leia, almost. Yeah, you know what? Let's just roll with it. Give it a bit of a line there. Right, that's a fairly ugly looking Leia hairdo with blue hair. Okay, so when it comes to the eyes, there are several components, and it's important to try to be aware of all these parts first. So for an eye, there is the white of the eye itself. I think it's technically called the sclera, if you want to get into anatomy. So there's like the white of the eye itself. Just get that. There's the white of the eye. There's the iris. And this is the part that's fairly complicated to draw. You know, there's the base color, and then you need to do the sense of the eye. And then actually, let's just leave it at that. There's the kind of circular iris part, and then there's the specular lighting of the outer and inner lens, and there's a lot to cover. And then on top of that, you have the eyelid itself, which is the eyelash, as well as the skin that would be the eyelid itself. So there's actually a few different components here. But all of these need to be in separate layers because, you know, you need to eventually move the eye and reveal it. So the first technique essentially has all of these parts being drawn separately. So I'm just going to do that on the left here. Let's name these because this is going to be a bit complicated. So let's see, there's sclera 1. So there is the white of the eye. This is going to be super disproportionate, huh? There's the white of the eye. And then you do the eye itself. And let's make this eye a bit of a red color. Let's make a red eye. And, you know, most of the time you don't see the whole iris when you look at the eye, right? So it's actually going to be larger than the white part itself. So like imagine you're just drawing an anime eye. And this is like the overall shape of it. That's terrible. And then the eye itself is going to be a circle that's going to be larger than this, larger than that itself. And then, you know, you have to fill it in a bit with some detailing, you know, here and there, and yada yada. So that's component number 2. Component number 3 would be the actual skin of the eyelid itself. And in order to make this stand out, I am not going to be painting in the same skin color as the face. I'm just going to do it a little bit darker. But you're going to need to draw a fairly good amount of the skin because it's going to blend into the skin of the face. So it's going to be something like that. Right, and it's, you know, you're probably going to need to do a fair amount there. And you're going to need to do a bunch for eyelid. Oh, 1. I made a typo there. And then you also do an eyelid for the bottom, obscuring all of that. And then you do... Am I keep making a typo there? 1. And then you do your eyeliner. So that's another layer. Although if you want to be lazy, you can just include that as part of the eyelid. So the eyeliner is probably going to be a bit like that. Let's do a bit of eyelashes as well. And that's the eyeliner one. And that's more or less it for the first eye. And I deliberately did the eyelids in a bit of a darker color for it, if it stands out. And I'm just improvising here, of course, but you know, you would be trying to make this fit over whatever you sketched for your character. So, you know, they might have an eye that's actually like that. But that's all of the overflow stuff you need to include for this eye. And that's most of the parts you need for the first method. And you can see that it's broken down quite a significant amount. If you want to break it down even further, it's important to keep in mind that, you know, it's like the eyelid is three-dimensional. So, you know, if you really wanted to, in order to show that three-dimensionality to it, you could actually do the eyelashes on a different layer as well. And it's all about trying to show that three-dimensionality, of course. Because you know, if you look at like an eyeball from the side, let's just draw an eyeball from the side here. Like there's the eye itself, and that's the eyelid, and those are the eyelashes, right? And this is a side view, but you're trying to draw a picture from the front. And when the eyelid closes, all of the perspective of all these components are going to change. So, you know, from there, you're going to need to make an eyeball that's still the same, but the eyelid is going to be closed at this point, and the eyelash is actually going to be facing down. And the only way to actually portray that is if you break everything up and move everything independently. That said, I'm not using this method because I took a lot of compromises to simplify the rigging process, but that's if you want to do a hyper detailed rig. This method as well is like there are actually sample models you can download, and this breakdown is more or less the same as what I saw in some of the first sample models, where they broke it down into, you know, the white, the eye, the eyelid, and I think and eyeliner as well. And that's the first method. So keep that in mind. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, just skip forward, I suppose. Second method. So the second method is the method that I use. And it's essentially the same as the first method, except that it's fully merged together. And it allows me to just have one single component to, you know, deal with the eyelids opening and closing. And depending on how well you can comprehend and keep track of everything in Live2D, this may be easier or harder. And I suppose I'll explain a bit more when I get to the rigging process. But I'm in this time around, I'm essentially just drawing the entire eyelid in a single block. And it leads to a different rigging process as a result. So again, I'm going to for the most part, this is going to be in only 3 parts. There's the white of the eye itself. Again, and it looks like the rain's picking up outside. So there's the white of the eye there. And then there's the eyeball. And let's do a green color this time. I hope you can see the pattern that I'm going for here. So there's, let's fill that in a bit. Let's give it a bit of specular. Now, if you want to do even more three-dimensional stuff, all of these parts that I'm drawing for the eye, they can be separate layers, right? Like, because it is a three-dimensional object, and maybe you want to do something really zoomed in and show all that 3D-ness. So if I really wanted to, I could do like, dear, did I just draw it on the wrong layer? But yeah, like I could do, a layer for the base, and then I do a new layer. I'm not going to do that, but I could do a new layer for just this part. And since the shimmer, the specular lighting, is going to be different, that's another layer. But since there are several layers of an eyeball, you're actually going to need to make a layer for that little dot right there, and that little dot right there, and maybe a third dot right there somewhere. But for the eyelid, I'm just going to draw this in a more or less just a single block. And again, I'm going to do that in a slightly dark color, just so things will be shown more easily. You may want to actually do this side as well. And then I'm just going to draw the eyelashes right on top of that. Maybe draw some bottom stuff as well. Man, that's a freaky looking face, isn't it? And that's it. There's only 3 layers. It's very similar to the first one, except that I'm just doing all of the eyelids in a single layer. And the consequence of this is that I need to rig it differently, although it may be easier for you to track in the drawing process. But in both cases, when I get to the rigging process, you'll see in both cases, the reason why I'm drawing so much skin is because I am actually going to need to pull that skin over the eyes. Yeah. The third method. Talking is a very dehydrating thing. Now, I'm not sure where to put this third eye. Let's do something like here, maybe. It's going to be a bit freaky. So, the thing about these is that you're drawing a pretty significant amount of skin to stretch over. And depending on how you draw the face, that might not be good for you. Because maybe it's not going to be a plain color. Like for me, I decided to do flat colors because it's a lot like an anime. So, the only reason why I'm doing a slightly different color for the skin here is to just make it pop out a bit for the sake of showing it. But since the face itself is just a flat color, it's fine. But there may be a case where you can't afford that, and if you do this method, it'll be much more complicated because you need to make sure the skin is seamless and all that. So the third method is going to consist of 3 parts again, like only 3, and it may actually be fairly simple as well. So let's do the parts. First off, there's the white of the eye. Let's just draw it on the forehead here. It's a bit freaky, but whatever. Now in this case, let's do a sketch first. Instead of just drawing the white randomly and having the eyelids dictate the shape of the eye, I'm actually going to draw the white of the eye accurately according to whatever the appearance of the anime model is. So, like, I'm probably going to make an eye that's a bit like, the third eye. Something a bit like that, I suppose. You know, the eyelashes will probably be there. Probably not going to bother with something at the bottom. You can do something at the bottom, of course, but yeah. So now I'm going to draw the white to actually fit the shape of the eye. Only gonna do my best here. And it's only going to be like that. It's not going to extend any further. And it's almost as if, you know, you're actually just drawing an eye on a regular piece of art. You know, you're only going to show the white that's visible rather than what's underneath. And then I'm going to draw the eye. And let's make this a blue eye. And again, the eye is going to be bigger than the actual white itself. So let's do something like that. Man, this is weird. Third eye. And then there's the white. And then the third component is the eyelash. Eyelash 3. RGB tons of mind eye, yes. So, let's do the eyelash like, how do I do like a middle eyelash? And let's get rid of that sketch. Now this is going to look rather odd, but that is actually how you should draw the third method, right? Like the eye, you're not going to bother with obscuring the eye at all. And the reason for that, like there is actually a, I believe there are actually filters and critter here. But the reason for this is because, if I can find it, what you're going to do in Live2D is to actually do a layer mask and hide the eye. And in Critter, there is something called destination in. So I can actually, well, it's not really going to work. I need to make a folder and stuff. So let's just make a group here. This is just temporary. So let's just drag the eye in the scroller. So if I set destination in, assuming this works, so it's essentially a clipping mask where everything that's painted in is the stuff that's shown. So if I set it back to normal, you're gonna see something like that. But here you can see that the eye is actually gone, right? So you know, if I moved it there, it's going to be obscured. yeah, and more will be explained once I get to the rigging process of that. So let's set that to normal again, and just leave that out. Get rid of that group. And an advantage of this method, this third method, is that it's going to be a bit like actual anime, right? It's so if you look at anime stills of TV anime and stuff, there's a fairly lazy method of drawing eyes where they actually draw the face, a blank face, and then they draw the eyes last and animate just the eyes. And a consequence of that is that it's actually on top of the hair. It's actually, and the hair does not obscure it. And it's mainly just a, an effect of the layering. That's the last part, so that's on top of everything. And the third method, the main advantage is that it's an fairly independent object and just go anywhere you want. And it might actually be one of the simplest methods now I think about it. But the consequence of this is that there is no skin, there is no eyelid part. So, again, if you have complicated skin or anything like that, it's not really going to show up. And yeah, so that's a freaky looking face, isn't it? Yeah. So for these two methods, a good thinking process is just to think of what would happen if you strip the skin away from your face, as horrifying as that sounds, because you're kind of slowly exposing what's underneath, and that's why you draw all the extra stuff underneath it. And then you cover it up with skin. I'm not gonna like make any debate on and make any argument on what's easier or what may be more efficient. I'm just gonna show all the different methods that I think could be good. The first method here, the red method, it was done on actual examples of sample Live2D models, like I said. The second method is essentially the same, except that I did it as one piece, and as a result, I rigged it differently. And the third method, I'm actually not aware of anyone doing it this way, and I haven't really looked into it, but it's a solution as well, I think. How long have I been going? Hopefully I haven't been going too long. Now, before I continue on, let's just try to make this look less freaky by adding a nose and a smile. Is that better or worse? Is that better or worse? Say, yes. I hope you don't wake up in the middle of the night screaming. Anyway, now I am skipping over a bit of the process, but I'm hoping that you're either familiar with the basics already and you've seen my tutorial, or you can follow along okay. Let's save this and export it as a PSD, a Photoshop file. So let's clean this up a bit, get rid of the layers here. I don't really need to do that, but delete that. Oh wait, it's locked. There we go. There we go. Let's save as. And just pick PSD. Why is that snapping? Oh, whatever. Photoshop. Right. Now, let's go over to Live2D. Apparently there's a sale or something. Let's close that. Now, once again, I just want to emphasize here, free version. I think I missed that in the previous tutorial I did. I skipped over this really quick, but you don't need to, there's no free, like you can do the free trial if you really wanted to, and that enables the pro stuff, but you can just pick the free version and once the trial is over, you'll just be on the free version. So I've been doing this the whole time on just the free stuff. Let's drag in the Photoshop file, just like that. Hope that nothing explodes, and also hope that no one has any nightmares from this. And also move my avatar to this side because I forgot about that last time. It's very important to keep an eye on this. This is the hierarchy of like movement, and this is the hierarchy of the images, and those are the parameters. Hopefully I don't need to go over that because I already did in a different video, and this is just focusing on the eyes. Right, so eye number 1 is probably it's in from one perspective it's the most complex part, and that's because it just has a lot of parts. But if you remember all of the different methods that I showed in the first tutorial, for the most part you don't really need to do anything new. It's all just primitive movements, and the parts are broken down small enough that you more or less just do linear movements. And the difficult part is just trying to make everything move in sync. So first off, let's group all of this with a deformer here. And that'll just make it easier to keep track of. Plus, I can also just move everything as a group for later, if I'm interested in that. Let's do a bit of quick eye movement first. So just gonna need to make some keyforms there. Join that together, I suppose. And just move that to the left. Move that to the right. Move that up. Move that down. Very easy. Assuming it wants to come, play along with me. The corners, you could do all the corners, but I'm just going to synthesize the corners there. And it's just automatically figuring out that you want to do a bit of an in-between for that. So now those are all the different corners. So the parameter in question, this is the left eye, isn't it? So it's going to be IL open here. And I can just ignore the sclera and the eye more or less. And this will just be more or less just moving this closed. So I make 2 keyframes. I don't really need 3. And so the 0 value is going to be when it's closed. So I need to think of where the line is going to be. Because another complicated aspect of eyes is that it's not really open and shut like a shutter, right? It's not going to close in the middle. The top eyelid is actually going to be a bit down. So it's not really going to be in the middle. It's going to be more like there. Well, there's a few different ways to do this, I suppose. Let's make a quick mesh first. And let's just push it down. And then just kind of adjust the shape somehow. I could probably stretch it out a bit. And it also needs to make, a big thing to watch out for is the top part here. And that's why drawing a significant amount is important, because you just saw there that I ended up showing the eye. So it's actually kind of important to make sure the top part stays a bit stretched. And that's like the top eyelid done. And same for the bottom eyelid. Let's make a quick mesh there. Make the keyforms, close it, and then kind of move this closed. And just do a bit of mesh adjustment there to make sure it lines up. Now, because of how complicated this is, and how complicated the movement of an eyelid is, you're probably going to want to do keyforms directly on the layer, because you're probably going to do a lot of mesh adjustment, and doing, deforming the deformers. You can only really do simple movements, like you're manipulating a box, right? And the grid itself is the mesh. You could try to do something complicated, but it takes a bit of setup, and it's easier to just do the mesh. And you can only really do this once, right? It's like if you want to do complicated movements, you really need to think about which movement is the most complicated and will need most adjustment, because then you're going to put that on the keyforms for directly on the thing. If it's just going to be a left-right movement, like for the eye or something, you could just do a deformer and move the deformer instead. So there's the eyeliner there, and the eyelash. Oh, well, hopefully it will be fine. So this is the part that gets a bit complicated, and you start having difficulty keeping track of things, and that's because all of these colors are the same, right? It's like, where's the line for where the eyelid closes? And that's one reason why I, just straight up did the eyelids in a different color. If you really wanted to, and like if you're drawing this yourself, right, you could just straight up draw reference lines and stuff on this thing. So like if I went back here, I could color it differently if I really wanted to, or I could just draw a reference line directly on top of this. And that way I'll know where the line is. Personally, I haven't actually done that yet, because I'm a masochist or something. Geez, I hope no one takes that joke the wrong way. But yeah, it's since you can just overwrite the layers with a Photoshop file, you could just draw on top of the layers and start drawing grid lines and stuff as reference, rather than doing it the hard way like I'm doing here, and trying to make this go over wherever the line is. Hopefully it's there. Yeah, so now this was now the eyelash here was a bit of a curve, and unfortunately there's no easy way around it. You're just going to need to manipulate the mesh carefully for it to become a straight line. Hopefully the mesh will be the right shape. So looks like it's not really synced up there. Oh, it's close enough, I guess. Yeah, that's close enough. And then for the last one, it's like, it's probably going to flip upside down and be down here. So now you've got eyelashes that sort of move in 3D. Yay! Geez, these are so many questions that I probably should not be answering if this is going to go on YouTube. So let's see. Let's just show an example here. So yeah, that's the eye. And I also, drew the eyelashes separately just so they can kind of do a three-dimensional movement-ish. And for the most part, this method is the simplest quote-unquote method because there are just lots of simple movements here. It's just really just pushing lots of rectangles open and shut in certain locations. And that's method number 1. Yay! Method number 2. Let's go take a look at method number 2. So this method, let's group these together first. There's only 3 parts, and I was rather lazy, and this is how I do my eyes. And well, let's do it. Let's make some basic movements here first. So there's left, there's right, there's up, there's down, and let's go all the way around. So for this, big advantage here is that there's only 1 part, right? And you're essentially just going to squish the hole closed until it kind of looks decent. And there's a bit of cheating, I guess, or just what would I call it? It's like, it's kind of roughness. I'll just say roughness. There's a bit of roughness to it. And the reason why I did it this way is because the eyes are tiny, right, on the model, and they blink so fast that you're not really gonna stop, and I kind of figured that you're not really gonna stop and take a look. Like, for the average viewer, they're not gonna take a look. And this method is very, very heavy on making sure you have the correct mesh shape, because there is a hole right there. And a lot of the process is making sure that the mesh is actually shaped correctly. And I generated an auto mesh right there for some reason. Let's delete that. Let's delete all of that. Yeah, this is the part where I say that I might, do the masochistic option again, because this is kind of the hard option. Yeah, this method though, and the reason why I did this method is because in terms of trying to visualize it, it's most similar to 3D animation, because you're actually going to do a full mesh for this eye, and more or less just press it closed. And it's just 100% mesh manipulation, and which is most similar to 3D animation. And a lot of it is going to be making sure all the vertices are in the right place. You're going to need to make probably 3-4 rings of vertices. So a ring there, and that's the edge of the circle. And then you're going to need to do a ring about here, and that's to preserve the shape of the eyelash, and also make, not really stretch the edge of that too much. And then you're going to have a lot of space here, because this is going to be the portion that stretches a lot. And after that, you're going to need like 2 rings of vertices here, mainly just to maintain the integrity of the edge, because you don't want, the edges to stretch and have screwed up textures. So this is going to stretch a significant amount. And yeah, so to make this, I'm not doing the left eye, I'm doing the right eye now. So in order to close this, you're just going to need to push it closed very, very slowly. You can do a bit of a box if you really wanted to. If I remember what the button for the box is, I think it's B. No, it's not B. Oh wow, I probably should have done this ahead of time. I don't remember the box button. What's the multi-select button? Oh, that works. I can just do shift click. Oh wait, no. Right, there we go. Okay, so I know what I'm doing. So you kind of just push, these vertices closed directly. And you kind of want to work slowly in order to make sure your eyes can keep track of everything. Because it's also going to slowly, very slowly change shape. And I'm just slowly, slowly, slowly pushing it closed, making sure I keep track of all of the vertices. And then I kind of just do the same for the top. Come on, draw a box. There we go. And here I'm just drawing a box and, resizing or moving the vertices directly and kind of just adjusting it. And there's going to be a lot of deformation at the edges, but if it happens fast enough, you're not going to notice, right? But that's also the difficult part, where you want to do the mesh in a good way, so it kind of scales down, and there isn't a lot of visible stretching. And honestly, I don't know if I should recommend this method, even though it's the method I did. And that is because, well, I mean, you can just look at this and it looks pretty ugly, right? But it's a method. And, what you get to a difficult bit here where, you're going to need to start overlapping the vertices in order to make sure there's no hole in the end. So, and this is where it gets complicated again, because, like, which vertices correspond to which part of the mesh? Who knows? I mean, I'm sure if, another Live2D artist sees this, they're going to criticize me so heavily for doing this choice. But, in the end, this is, you only need to draw one thing. Yeah, there's a lot of errors there. Jeez. What's that error? I don't know what that error is. But yeah, this is like the messiest method of all. Oh, whatever, let's just do that. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. I know how to do Live2D, sort of. I was self-taught just like everyone else. Yeah, that's the second method for doing the eye. Let's kind of show that. That looks good, doesn't it? There's a bit of an error there, but like if I do it here, yeah, and it's just stretching everything closed. And well, I've already listed the pros and cons, right? It's not going to look very pretty, but it is one of the faster methods, because it's just one part. And, the compromise that I took was that, well, my model's going to be zoomed out quite a bit on screen. You're not really going to notice these flaws. Well, not you, but the viewer. Like, the viewer's not going to notice these flaws, like, hopefully anyway. And that's method number 2. Method number 3. And let's group this together again. Now this part, yeah, sure, you notice it, but this is a tutorial, so you get to see all the ugly bits. Have you ever been to like a slaughterhouse or something like that? It's like, and then some people lose their appetite for meat, and some people gain an appetite for meat. But that's a conversation to be had later rather than in the middle of a tutorial. Sure. But yeah, for the most part, these two methods are fairly similar. And I was trying to figure out what to call these methods, and I suppose, like these are outside-in methods. You're getting something on the outside of the eye and pushing in. And the third method, you're more or less just concentrating on the inside. So I guess I could call it inside out. But it also relies on different ideas, and some of it depends on what you're comfortable with. And maybe it's best to be aware of all of them. That one just relies on moving primitives, so it's a lot like a paper doll, right? Like you only have fixed parts and they don't change shape very much. This one, if you understand 3D animation and the fact that, this does happen in 3D animation, like all the meshes need to move together, maybe you're familiar, maybe you're more comfortable doing that method, and that's what I was comfortable with. The third method relies on what I call it 2D animation. It's really more about just 2D art and like complicated layering techniques, and I don't really do a lot of complicated layering. Yeah, let's do this first, just to do the eye. That's not right. Move an eye there, an eye there, the eye down, move the eye up, and go all the way around. So for this, this is where you start looking at the inspector. And for the most part, there are a few things here that are useful, but for the majority of my rigging, I've ignored it. There's opacity, which is, the method I showed for the mouth in the previous tutorial. But there is also clipping ID here. And this functions similarly to a layer mask or a destination in, which is what Critter called it. Destination in there. And what it does is that it takes the opacity of a different layer somewhere in this file and applies that to something else. So it's going to need to take the ID here. So I want to apply the ID of this sclera. I think it's called a sclera. Jeez. And actually put it here. I'm just going to paste it in, press enter. There's a warning. And it mainly has to do with the fact that, well, clipping is more computationally expensive than just moving stuff around and stuff, right? Because it's trying to use another object to do something. So that's a disadvantage. And that's what the big warning is here. But all of a sudden, the eye fits into the sclera. And it's fully, and it's using it as a layer mask. And the layer itself is still there, but you can do windows and stuff. If you want to do something that's just a plain, clipping mask, you could just, make this transparent. And actually, that doesn't work. I guess not. But they are hidden or guide images. Okay, never mind. My mistake. But yeah, even though this is below the eye, the alpha levels of it is used to dictate the appearance of this eye when it moves around. And now, in order to rig these eyelids, quote unquote, what you do is that you just rig the eye whites themselves and squash it into a line. So let's make a mesh here, and there's only rigging here for 2 eyes, so I suppose I guess I'll just rig it on my mouth. So yeah, so let's just make it, let's see. Yeah, I'm just gonna close that. So I'm more or less just gonna literally just push this closed, and that's it. Now it's important to dictate the shape, of course. So now that everything's a straight line, I can just gently use my arrow keys here, turn it back into a curve. But this may not actually. Yeah, this is gonna like cause a few issues. And there's going to be a very thin sliver there. Keep the eye there. And then, in order to hide all of that, I'm going to have to move this eyelash to cover it. So hopefully it'll move in sync. Let's make an eye there. I'm just going to use the box. Hopefully it'll cover things. Deselect those. Do the same here. And obviously this is a bit messy, but I'm just, you put more work into making it look pretty. And that's the third version of the eye. All of them have advantages and disadvantages, though. I mean, it's possible that this is actually the best one because you can move it around. This is most similar to like I said earlier. In TV anime, this is the third method here. Is probably the one that's closest to what's done in TV anime because they just draw the face, they draw a blank face, and to save on the budget, all they do is animate the eyes, and everything else is a still picture. So that's why it's like floating on top of the hair and stuff. Here, though, there's lots of moving parts, and maybe you want those moving parts, maybe you don't. Let's move the hair over everything. And then, like, it can stay under the hair and all that. And important thing to point out if you haven't noticed is that I am just moving the group, and that's not going to affect the rigging of anything because it's just moving within that deformer group. So grouping, like these deformers have so many have so many uses. Like you can rig them or you can use them as a group. So if there needs to be an adjustment for its movement, you can just do that. And yeah, I think that's everything. So let's save this. Let's put that in my tutorial folder. And then, let's see. Let's make a UV map at 2000 by 2000 because that's the highest you can do in the free version. Press OK to make it render. Oh, right, I nearly forgot. Jeez. So, all I did was show eyes, 3 different eyes, right? But you have 2 eyes, and you're only going to be using one of these methods. So in the end, you might actually end up with something like you know, you might actually only have this eye, and then you need to do the other side. And you can actually just straight up mirror this if you really wanted to. And that way you only need to rig one eye. And the way you do that, before I forget, is that you just copy paste it first. You right click on this in the deformer, you copy paste. Paste it. And now you have actually that doesn't work, does it? You can only do it for single layers. So the key with this, I'm using this as an example, I suppose, but you can copy the eyelid because that's the main movement, and then you paste it, and now you have a duplicate there. And I'm going to actually rename that in the deformer. And if you right click on this, you can actually just flip stuff, and the rigging will actually still be there. So there's reflect. Reflect horizontally or vertically, that'll reflect the mesh, or you can reflect the parameters. So let's reflect that. And then I need to put this in a different group or something, because if I move that directly, it's going to affect the parameters. So if I put that in a group, just move it there, and all of a sudden, I have my left eye done. Just like that. Put that below the head, and there we go. Of course, you have 2 eyes, so then you're going to need to, whoops, click on that and select change, because then it's going to move that parameter to a different slider. That'll just go on the left eye. And it's another reason why I did it this method, I suppose, is because it's just one part, right? You only have one part, and I can just mirror it easily. If you were doing it for these other methods, you do need to copy everything over one at a time and then reflex. You can't just copy the whole group. So, and the end result was the same, like in my opinion. So, yeah. So let's just put that there. Make everything visible again. That's the mirroring thing, although I'm not really going to focus on that. Or should I make a 4-eyed monster? Maybe I should make a 4-eyed monster. Yeah, sure. Save that, compile, export for runtime. And let's just open up my control panel and just quickly load it. My mouth is my eye. Yeah. Yeah. That's so freaky looking. That's so freaky looking, isn't it? Ah. Yes, it really is quite freaky. Let's end that nightmare. Okay, so now this is really just an extra thing, but all this grouping, this is just for the eyes. But when you think of the face, it's simply like another version of that as a whole, right? So you're going to want to group all of this stuff, like do a control click here, select all of that, and then group it. And, it's the same process of rigging where you group stuff together and then you have something at the top, which is your main, and then all of a sudden I can rig the face and the movement related to it, and it'll move everything in that group. Like if I deform this directly, right? So if I want the face to actually look in different directions, I can just deform the group. And wow, that's super freaky, isn't it? I just made a big mistake there because I forgot to change the thing there. That's freaky. But yeah, this is just a quick left-right rigging. And then let's do the hair as well. Do a mesh there. Or actually, let's just group it. That'll just make it easier for me. Okay. Let's do that, and let's export it again. Override that. Now I'm looking left and right. That's so freaky. And then, it's like, that's the middle eye is rigged to my eye, my mouth. So, nightmares aside, I suppose, if there was a question for the class I wanted to leave or something like that, it's like, which method do you think is best? All of these, are complicated in different ways. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. I do have like I'm hoping I can do commissions or something like that. But I do think the third method is something I'll begin to apply. It's not on my current model. I used the method on the green eye here. But the reason why I did the method for the green eye is because it was a simplified version of this, and for this, like, the reason I did it that way is because I looked at existing examples of Live2D, and that was how they did it. I haven't actually done, like, in all honesty, I haven't actually done this method before, and yet it seems rather easy. So I guess there is something to be said about this method. But, I just, yeah, I'm probably going to try to apply this method if I end up making models in the future, like for someone else, or if I wanted to make an updated version of mine. But yeah. That is so freaky. And like the eyelids all miscolored as well. That's okay. Okay. Well, if you can't sleep at night, um, you can blame it on just try to tell yourself that it's because I did a great tutorial and you want to do something, yeah, and not because I freaked you out.